Hello.
Hi, Henry.
How you doing? You okay?
Very well, mate. Yes. You?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Not bad. Nice weather for it.
Lovely. I'm just looking out my window here. I'm on the first floor, and literally 10 seconds ago, my builder, who's currently doing a bit of work, got up a ladder and walked across the roof, which is just outside my window here. I'm thinking, oh God, that's not great timing. But yeah, apart from that, weather's great.
Yeah, no. Well, I was going to say I wanted to set up outside, but didn't trust the Wi-Fi. So on that note, we're all live. So obviously, any issues, then please forgive us, and we'll try and resolve it ASAP. I'll do a very quick introduction in the hope there are people tuning in. So yeah, welcome to the latest episode of the Dialogue for our LinkedIn Live series. If you haven't tuned in before, I'll give a very brief introduction. Firstly, to introduce Harnham, we are the global leaders in data and analytics recruitment, operating in the UK, the EU and the US, covering permanent and contract positions across the following verticals. That's data engineering, software, DevOps and BI, data science, digital analytics, marketing analytics, risk analytics, and now life science analytics as well. Quick introduction of myself. So I manage Harnham's UK data engineering permanent team. And today we're joined by Jamie Thomson. We're going to be talking about the implementation of streaming architecture on the cloud. So I'll hand over to you, Jamie, to introduce yourself.
Okay, thanks, Henry. Yeah, my name's Jamie Thomson. I work for Moneysupermarket.com. So if you're in the UK, you've probably heard of us because you'll have seen our ads on the TV with the money can't bull, things like that. Yeah. If you're not in the UK, we're a company that helps people save money on household bills. That's what we try and do. So I joined the company recently as principal data engineer, focusing on our efforts in GCP, moving a lot of our data and analytics workloads into the cloud and into GCP specifically.
Looking forward to hearing more. Thank you for that, Jamie. Do love the adverts. Always seems to be cropping up. I like it. So just a reminder to everyone, all the viewers, that obviously, once again, this is a live session. So please feel free to join the chat. Please get involved with any questions in the comments, and we'll try and go through them throughout this live session. I guess we'll kick off, Jamie, with the first question. So please do tell us a bit more about Moneysupermarket's recent cloud-related data transformation.
Okay, so we've been actually a cloud customer for quite a while. Our existing data and analytics solution lives in AWS. That's running on EC2 machines, so it's kind of a self-hosted implementation, if you like. So recently a decision was made that we want to move that lock stock into GCP. So that's currently what we're in the process of doing. We're taking all our analytics workloads, moving them into GCP, and taking advantage of the technology that Google provides for doing data analytics type stuff.
Perfect. Great. Well, obviously we're going to get stuck into the specifics. I guess I'll start with just to touch on why you decided to go towards GCP in a bit more detail.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there are quite a few reasons, but it comes down really to a few key technologies that Google offer as part of GCP. The main one is BigQuery. We think it's a really great technology for doing the type of things that we want to do. So that type of serverless aspect of not having to maintain infrastructure ourselves, but still being able to provide a data warehousing and a querying service is really crucial to the sort of things we want to do. We don't want to be in the business of managing infrastructure. So BigQuery speaks to that really well. Alongside that, we've got there's a lot of supporting technologies that really suit our use case quite well also. One of those is PubSub. And the reason for that is we're building upon an architecture that Moneysupermarket already has. The actual existing Moneysupermarket website is built upon a messaging broker called Kafka, which is basically, people may know, it's technology for communicating between different microservices using like a message bus sort of architecture. So what we're able to do is consume all of those messages that are flying around. They're actually in AWS. So we set up a VPN connection between GCP and AWS. And what we're able to do is consume that that massive fire hose of events that are flowing around and consume them into GCP. And we're doing that by taking those events from Kafka, bringing them into a pub subtopic in GCP, and then we're processing them using a combination of Dataflow, which is Google's serverless streaming processing technology, and then landing the data into BigQuery for later processing, downstream data marts and analytical workloads, things like that. So really, it's those combinations of BigQuery, PubSub, and Dataflow, which are the big ticket items for us, really. Aside from that, there's some really cool things around, particularly in BigQuery, that's really appeal to us, given that we're processing all these events which are coming off Kafka, which are all basically JSON documents. BigQuery is really good at giving us a capability to store those sorts of nested events and give us the capabilities to query across all those nested events in essentially a single row of data. And we can also apply policy tags to a lot of that data. Given that we're a fintech business, we have to be really cautious about who we grant access to see customer data, essentially. We do have real customer data sitting in BigQuery. We don't want to give blanket access to that data to anyone who happens to be who's working for us, who's using it for analytical purposes. So we want to make sure that only people who have got access to what we call red data, or the people call PII data, only the people that have access to it are actually able to see it. And we implement that using a feature of BigQuery called policy tagging. So we can actually attach essentially metadata to the columns which we have in BigQuery and say who can actually have access to those. So two different people can issue the same query against the BigQuery table. And depending on who they are, if they've got different access permissions, they'll actually see different data, because the person who doesn't have access to the red columns won't be able to see it. That's a huge advantage for us. We need to be really cautious about who can see what and who can't see stuff that they're not supposed to be able to see. And policy tagging is something that's helping us do that.
Yeah, sounds like a really exciting project. From what we see on the market, lots of candidates want to get their hands dirty with these technologies, modern components of GCP, but also really interesting to see you move from one of the main cloud providers in AWS to GCP and explain the benefits for that. Is going to be really interesting for our viewers. One thing,
it was really interesting for me as well, Henry. I'm quite new to the business myself, and the decision to move to GCP was not mine. It was made before I got here, but I've got quite a bit of experience in GCP. But seeing this opportunity to come here and work on these really quite cool technologies, really, which I didn't have in my previous role, is really what appealed to me. So yeah, I've been here a short time now, and so far it's proving to be a pretty good move.
Good. Already getting yourself involved in the LinkedIn Live, so it's got to be.
I know. I've been here a few short weeks, and somebody said, "Do you want to do a LinkedIn Live event?" Yeah, okay, why not? Sounds like fun. And here we are.
Brilliant stuff. We already have some questions flying in. Just before I touch on them, I'm aware that, as you've already touched on, that there was a pretty good batch system in place, which was probably put together before you arrived, and obviously moving to streaming is, the new way. But could you touch on that system already in place at the moment?
Yeah. So that, as I said, that is currently in place and will be for quite a while. We are slowly but surely moving away from it, but it's going to be in place for quite a while. It's a very robust system. It's been built up by people who still work for us over a number of years. That's running in AWS, as I said. It's running upon a technology called Vertica, which is a data warehousing technology, which we run on top of Amazon's EC2 service. So that's where we store the data for these analytics purposes. And within AWS, the tool we use for doing ETL type stuff is a tool called Talend, which is not something I know too much about, I have to be honest. But that's an ETL tool that we use currently in AWS.
Perfect. Thank you. And hopefully that answers Saud's question. But obviously, if not, please feel free to continue commenting. We do have a question from Martin, which I'm keen to get your thoughts on, Jamie. What sort of data volumes are you looking at?
At the moment, we're in the multi-million. I don't actually know. I haven't got that down to that level of detail recently, but we're looking at millions of events flowing in every hour. So yeah, that's I don't know the exact number, but yeah, we're in the billions of events a year, things like that. So yeah, we've got a lot flowing in.
Probably put you on the spot a little bit there.
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
I should have known, really. The people watching this on my team going, no, who know the exact answer, and they'll be kicking me off. I can tell you.
I'm sure we can get back to Martin, no problem. So one of the things that will come up a lot on the market, not only are the data migrations, but also the streaming techs. And obviously you've touched on PubSub. Are you looking forward to getting your teeth stuck into using PubSub and Kafka in conjunction, and how will they be used together?
Yeah, I mean, my team specifically are not going to be too involved with Kafka itself. We're in the very lucky position that there's a bunch of people who have been using Kafka in MSM, Moneysupermarket, for a long time, and we're basically sitting on the end of a pipe consuming messages off that Kafka queue, consuming them into PubSub, and yeah, that's working pretty well right now. PubSub is a fantastic technology. It just makes this sort of thing so easy. If I think about things I've had to do in the past to stand up equivalent infrastructures to do the same thing, stand up a PubSub topic to consume these events is really quite simple. So it's a game changer in terms of being able to just leverage that technology from Google without have to implement too much ourselves.
Great. So in terms of a lot of people tuning in will probably be looking into cloud technologies like AWS and GCP. I'm really keen to hear from you about, if you were hiring into your team, would you absolutely need candidates to have exposure to one of those vendors?
Not absolutely. I'd be looking for people who can show that they're smart enough to pick up those technologies. Should they come on board? Really, when we're looking for people, we want people who have got experience. If we're taking an experienced person, their experience needs to be in doing data analytics type workloads, and that means doing ETL and understanding the nuances of doing that type of work. If they've got experience on the cloud, using AWS, Azure, GCP, that's great. If they've got experience in using GCP specifically, even better. And I'll be honest, we are currently looking for people with specific GCP experience, but equally we'd be looking for people who have got experience in using in just doing data analytics type work. So I've been doing this a while. We always used to call them ETL engineers. So that's the type of experience we're looking for. But also, we're just looking for smart people. If somebody can come to us and show that that they've got the nous to pick these things up, we'd be interested in talking to them.
Sure. Okay. I'm sure that's really refreshing for a lot of the viewers to hear. I'm sure a lot of the viewers may be looking for work, and getting advice from you as to what they should be trying to pick up experience with or studying will be really helpful. Obviously, for those who are looking for a job in this area, please do visit harnham.com, where there are hundreds of data and analytics roles that you can apply to. Sorry, Jamie, you're going to say something.
Yeah, well, I was just going to talk about, if this sorts of technology are interested to you, there are things out there you can do to go and gen up on them if you like. And I've been doing work on GCP for about 3 or 4 years now, I think. Yeah. And I started out just by going to the Google documentation and not just reading that, but you go to any service in GCP, they've got a landing page for every single service, and on there you'll see a quick start tutorial. I just did all those. It's a great way of just getting familiar with the technology, just understanding the nuts and bolts of it, even if you're not building anything that's going to be production quality or something that you're intending to deploy to production. Just understanding how these things work and how they hang together. Those quick start tutorials on the Google website are really, really useful, I find. So I recommend people go and look at that if you're interested in learning more about this sort of tech.
That's amazingly helpful. I was going to ask about particular courses, but you've touched on obviously what helped you, which hopefully will help the thousands, millions watching perhaps. We've got a question from James that we're going to come on to, like engineering best practices, but I thought it was a good one to potentially kickstart that conversation. But James has asked, what technology are you using for CI/CD pipelines if you have one?
Oh, okay. Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, we are. And in fact, one of the things I keep harping on to my team about is making sure that we are doing things like automated testing in our CI pipelines. And one of the things that I've put in place since we got here is exactly that. We have a CI pipeline, which literally on every single Git push from one of our engineers will actually deploy our entire infrastructure into GCP, run a set of tests upon it, and then tear that infrastructure down at the end of the pipeline. That all happens within a run of our CI pipeline. The technologies that we're using to do that are we've made a massive investment in a tool called Terraform, which is a tool that helps you manage infrastructure as code. It's an infrastructure as code tool. So pretty much all the stuff that we're deploying to GCP right now is done using Terraform. And that CI pipeline itself is running in Github Actions. So when I came on board, I was quite keen to use Github Actions as opposed to the stuff that MSM were using in quite a lot of the other in the rest of the business. I won't say what that was. It was with a J. But when we came on, I was really lucky, got to speak to the right people, and we explored using GitHub Actions for doing CI/CD, and that's what we're doing right now.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much for that explanation. One thing, hearing from you then and touching on the like DevOpsy technologies, one thing that could be really interesting for candidates is those data engineers who do get exposure to DevOps tools, Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, Jenkins, etc. How much at MSM do you have like separate teams, a DevOps team and an engineering team, or do you have a bit of a data ops team? Just out of interest.
Do you know what? It's actually we're sort of trying to figure that out at the moment. I think traditionally it's been quite separate. There's been a DevOps team separate from the implementation team, if you like, which, if you think about it, is not really the way DevOps is supposed to be. We're actually trying to bring that closer together, and literally just now before this call, I was spending time with those DevOps guys that we have, trying to figure out just some nuances of that CI/CD pipeline. Actually, we're looking to move from GitHub runners to self-hosted runners, so runners that we run in GCP ourselves. So we got our DevOps guys working on that right now, but we're looking to bring them closer into our data engineering team, so that they're not separate teams, if you like. We're trying to be a complete team where we work on we'll have different people focusing on particular areas of speciality, but we do think of ourselves as one overarching team. That's what we're moving towards.
Right. Okay, that's really interesting. It's just a bit of a buzz term at the moment, data ops, and it's what some candidates are looking into. I know that you get certain hybrid roles. Obviously, you've got the data engineers, data science, machine learning engineers. I'm seeming to see a lot more data ops come onto the market. So I was interested to get your opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit of an old skeptic, I must admit. I don't see that much delineation between what you might call a data ops person and a data engineering person. I think there's a huge amount of crossover there. Perhaps they've got slightly different focuses, but the core skills that people are going to be using are pretty much consistent across those, I would have thought. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm happy to be told I'm wrong. But yeah, I would hope that if we're taking people on, they'll be able to take the skills that they've got and be able to fit into either one of those roles, a data ops type role or a data engineering role. to me, they're pretty much one and the same. I certainly want to make them one and the same. We want to make sure we've got people who have got the skills to apply to either one of those sorts of focuses.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. I just should remind new viewers joining that today we're joined by Jamie Thomson from Moneysupermarket, and we're talking about the implementation of streaming architecture on GCP. Once again, if you have any questions, please do write them in the comments and we'll try our best to get through them. So yeah, I think this is a decent question from Emmanuel, one that I think would interest a lot of the viewers, which is just what are the pain points during the implementation, especially for people new to the technologies?
That is a good question. Data flow itself, I would say, is not quite something you just pick up off the shelf and you just start using it. It miraculously works. What it can do for you is really quite amazing. The ability to stream data and process it as it's incoming is fantastic. But it does take quite a bit of getting used to. You really have to spend some time learning that technology and the best ways of going about it. With the volume of data that we are processing, I'm talking about those millions of events coming in every day, it's inevitable there are going to be nuances in that data that we just haven't expected. There are going to be new things that we just haven't been ready for. So we're going to make sure that we have any such data that comes in like that, we know what to do with. So that's traditionally the way you cope with that is building something called a dead letter queue. And that's taking messages that don't conform to an expected structure and being able to put them somewhere so that you can process them and investigate those issues later. So really making sure that you're able to take account of things which you're not expecting and still being able to do something about them later is really important. The second one, I'd say, is given we're using a technology which is all about streaming data, you've got considerations around, well, how do you change that thing when it's already running in production? Because that's not something, it's not like a batch processing scenario where something runs for a few hours every day and then you get a window where you can change it. This thing is running 24/7, right? So we don't have much ability to actually change that pipeline, those data flow pipelines should we need to do it. So you need to think about those things in advance. Think about how you're going to cope with that. You may not in the future ever have to change that pipeline. Hopefully we never do. The reality is that at some point you probably will. So think about how you're going to cope with that and how you're going to deal with making sure that you don't lose any messages in the process of upgrading your pipeline to a different version. That's quite a difficult problem to solve. Google do things to make it easy for you, but you still got to make sure that you're using those things in the right way.
Great. I think that would be extremely helpful. It's a question we actually get quite a lot from candidates asking about certain pain points, certainly when using new tech. So really appreciate that. Thank you, Emmanuel. It's been pretty technical, and I'm going to try and give you a bit of a break, Jamie, by just asking about one of the other projects that I'm aware of at Moneysupermarket regarding the marketing platform, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah. And in fact, when I spoke earlier on about how we're slowly but surely moving workloads from AWS into GCP, the very first one that we tackled was the implementation of a new CRM system. So we're using a third-party system called Braze, B-R-A-Z-E. And what this allows us to do is automate the email campaigns that we run, which is a massive part of Moneysupermarket's business. That's the third-party system. We need to feed data into that third-party system regarding our customers so that it can do things like build segments of users so that we can target the right people that we send those emails to. So the first big ticket item we've been working on in GCP is finding a way that we can take our stream data and push it into this third-party Braze system as quickly as possible. So that's been quite a challenge. We had very short time frames in which to do that work. We went live with it a couple of weeks ago, and the first campaign got sent out, I think, on the 10th of April, I think. So So that's a campaign that was sent from Braze. I think it was sent to 11 million customers, and all of that data, all the user profiles to feed that segmentation engine within Braze were all fed from our GCP implementation.
Great.
It's quite hairy. We didn't have long to do it, but thankfully got it up and running, and seems to be working fine at the moment.
So as a customer, is that will that be more of an efficient way of firing off email campaigns to targeted customers?
Yeah, well, part of the challenge is don't send emails that you don't have to, right? So we don't want, nobody likes spam emails. We're not stupid. No, we all know that. But if we send emails to the right customers at the right time, then they can actually be quite informative and quite useful. Yeah, the perfect example is if you know that someone's car insurance is coming up for renewal, maybe we might have an opportunity there to feed them an email with possible quotes, and that's the sort of thing that we might want to do with this Braze system. Yeah,
no, super interesting. As said, there's so much going on with like marketing that's so advanced. Even
and the other part of it as well, and that actually this was a Braze or another system which is very new to MSM as well. Mm-hmm. But it got quite a lot of capabilities because it provides us an SDK that we can include in our website, so that we can collect, when we send these emails to people, the click-throughs that they hopefully then come back to our website with. We can capture that information via Braze, and then Braze has got this fantastic system where it can feed all of this data that it has about activity within the campaigns back to us in GCP. Mm-hmm. So we've got a regular feed of data that comes in. It's literally about every 2 minutes. Braze is drip feeding us information about what people are doing in regards to those campaigns in real time. So we're able to see with about 5 to 10 minute latency what activity is actually going on right now in regard to those campaigns, which really is quite a game changer. So being able to see how your campaigns are doing, essentially being able to evaluate them at the time that they're going out is hugely valuable, and that's the sort of thing that we're really moving into now. And that was a big motivation for moving to Braze as well.
Okay, great. On that topic of working with other internal teams at Moneysupermarket, I think something that viewers might find interesting is that stakeholder interaction. Is that something that lots of your team members will get access to, working with external and internal stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the piece of work that I just spoke about, our internal stakeholders are our CRM team, our marketing team, essentially, which is a huge part of MSM's business. And we are now, they now have a dependency upon us to get the data that they need in a timely fashion. So yeah, absolutely. We've got a large body of people within MSM that are now relying on the things that we're doing. And a large part of an engineer's job is to interface with those people and speak with them, understand what their needs are, understand exactly what it is we need to be doing for them. I spend a lot of my time speaking to some of our friends in our CRM department, who are all based in, mostly based in Manchester and Chester. Yep. Which is different from me. I'm in London, so I haven't got to meet them face to face yet because of the pandemic, but I'm hoping to do that in a not too distant future. That's a large part of what everybody here has to do.
Okay, and without putting you on the spot too much, there's lots of viewers again who will be looking to improve, interview techniques and the way they come across in interviews. And one of the pushbacks we get from clients is that stakeholder interaction. And being able to translate technical requirements to non-technical stakeholders. Mm-hmm. I assume it's something you find pretty easy. Is there any advice you could give to viewers who might look to improve that skill?
I wouldn't say it's easy. It's far from easy. One thing that I do try and focus on quite a lot is communicating in as an unambiguous way as possible. I've kind of been at this game quite a long time, and whenever there's problems that occur, I quite often find they can be traced back to a bit of communication that wasn't understood by people. So I harp on quite a lot to people about making sure that whatever they're writing, whatever they're communicating is clear, is unambiguous. I use that word quite a lot. And so to make sure that there can be no misunderstanding, or as little as possible, when we're communicating with people. The technical challenges are challenges, but I do find that the real challenges that any business has is the people problem, really, making sure that people are able to work together and making sure that communication is clear and, here we go, unambiguous as possible. And I spend a lot of time rereading my emails after I've written them, and Teams messages and things like that, just making sure they are as clear as possible. And I always try and tell people to try and do a similar thing.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. You say it's hard. You do make a good job of it. I'm non-technical, and you're helping me understand how all these techs work. So that's been really helpful. So we'll probably get back onto the more engineering-focused questions.
Okay.
To remind everyone again, I'm joined today by Jamie Thomson from Moneysupermarket, a lead engineer, talking about the implementation of streaming architecture on GCP. We've had a good question from Radha Krishnan regarding testing and continuous versioning. I think we'll come on to it because I was going to touch on a bit more about your team and the developers and enablement within your team. So if you could elaborate on that, then I'm sure we'll cover that question.
Okay, yeah. Let me touch on the testing aspect of that, because I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, sure.
I've actually been involved in quite a lot of conversations about it just this week. We are trying. I talked earlier on about how we've got this CI/CD pipeline in which we're standing up our infrastructure on every single Git push, running a bunch of tests, and then tearing it down again. And the running those tests is really crucial to us. So I refer to that as integration testing as opposed to unit testing. Unit testing, I think of as something that can be done running tests on the code without actually deploying it somewhere. An integration test to me is actually taking the thing that we define, deploying it somewhere, and then run the tests that we run on that infrastructure to make sure that it does what it's supposed to. Are what I term integration tests, and we're putting a lot of time and effort into making sure we get those integration tests right. So, classic example, one I was writing this week is we have a tool, one of our guys is writing, which we call the schema translation tool, which is able to look at the schemas of the events that we're expecting coming in from Kafka, and then build tables in BigQuery which will hold those events when they come in. So we have a record. We know what the schema of those events should be, and on a regular basis we are consuming the definition of those events, which all sit in a Git repo somewhere. And based on the definition of those events, based on those schemas, we are building the BigQuery tables, which will hold those events when they come in. So that's a pretty crucial part of our architecture. But we've got to make sure that works. So what are we doing? We're writing tests which actually trigger that process to actually go and pull down the definition of these schemas and then verify that the tables that it defines are actually created in BigQuery. That, to me, that is a good end-to-end test. So the technologies that we're using to do that, we're using something called Behave. Behave is a behavioral-driven, I can never remember this term, behavioral-driven development tool, BDD tool.
Yeah.
For doing BDD type testing within Python. So we're quite a big Python shop. We do quite a lot of our development in Python. And we're encouraging our QA teams to actually write these BDD tests using this Behave framework that actually verify that our code does what it's supposed to. And that test I just talked about, which is verifying that our tables are getting built correctly with the correct schemas, is a classic case. Another one might be when a certain event comes in from that Kafka queue, we can simulate that event arriving in one of these BDD tests and verify that the data actually gets written to a BigQuery table. in the correct format and is queryable thereafter and all that sort of thing. And the other important aspect of that is making sure that the red columns within those tables can only be seen by the people who have access to them. So we want to make sure we've got tests that verify that sort of soup to nuts sort of flow of data and make sure that it all works properly. And we're running those tests in our CI pipeline, and we've got lots more of them that we need to write. But that's the journey that we're on around doing automated testing of our ETL workflows, essentially.
Great. You're very thorough in your answers. So
I tend to talk a lot, Henry. I'm sorry. I go on and on.
It's brilliant. I'm sure the viewers are really engaged by it. But the reason I said that is lots of the questions I'd prepared, you're answering in your answers, which is good. But it means that I'm going to have to put you on the spot again. And how would you advise viewers, Jamie, on how they might do like best engineering practices, whether it's in their day job or learning them? Because so many candidates do ask, me as a recruiter, this question, and so many clients require it, and it's quite difficult to advise on, if that makes sense.
It kind of does, but it's also a difficult one to answer. Like, how do you teach someone to be a good engineer? Is that essentially what you're asking? It's difficult. I'm always trying to teach myself the same thing. That journey of learning never stops. There's always something new to learn in this industry. So data flow is quite new to me recently. I've had to sort of become familiar with that. 3 years ago, I knew nothing about Terraform. That was a technology I had to get my head around. I consider myself pretty proficient in it now. But again, it's just something you need to learn. And you know what? The best way to learn these things is just to get on and do them, just to actually build something with them. I think back to when I started doing Python programming, which was probably about 6-7 years ago in my previous role. I got sent on a Python training, three or 4 day Python training course up at Euston Station, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was useful. I learned quite a bit, but until you can actually put that stuff into practice, I kind of feel that going to all the training courses in the world isn't going to be any use until you actually get to use it on something. So I'd encourage people to find work that's going to interest you, find work where you're going to be challenged, and you can put the stuff that you've learned into practice. I think that's the key thing, really.
Okay. That's helpful. I did want to touch on developer enablement, which I think we've talked about, as well as the culture and how you're making developers productive. I think you mentioned it already, but the recent move to GitHub, I don't know whether you wanted to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, that was something that I drove quite a lot. The tool that a lot of the business are already using is inferior, I shall say, to GitHub. It is a Git repo hosting product, but it's not GitHub. We've moved over to GitHub, and I've been very, very impressed. In my previous role, I was using a tool called GitLab, which is very similar.
Yep.
It includes a hosted CI/CD solution, and I was a big fan of GitLab when I first came here, but I've kind of been converted to GitHub and Github Actions quite a lot. That's not to say anything against GitLab. They're two different solutions. GitLab is something that you host yourself, whereas GitHub is a solution that's essentially a software as a service solution. And there are implications that come with using a software as a solution. Service. For example, I was talking about earlier on how we're having to change our CI pipeline at the moment, and literally I've got a guy working on it today to use self-hosted runners. So we're not actually running any of our code in that CI pipeline in GitHub's data centers. Essentially, we want to be running it on infrastructure that we control. So we are building those self-hosted runners in GCP, and that's what our CI pipeline will soon be running on. I forgot what the question was. I rabbit on so much.
Just about the move to GitHub, which
so that it's been good. GitHub Actions, especially, I'm a very big fan of. I first started using it, and the first thing I learned about was a feature called Super Linter. So linting linting your code, checking it for consistencies and checking it's been written the right way. It's a thing I'm a big fan of. I'm not a fan of doing things like documenting your coding standards or things like that and putting it on a wiki somewhere. I would rather have tools that actually check that for you and run those tools as part of your CI pipeline. And then if somebody's committing code that doesn't adhere to those standards, then you want your CI pipeline to fail and them to go and fix it. It doesn't really matter what the standards are. I don't really care what is the right way of formatting code, as long as everybody uses the same standard. Now, the great thing about one of the great things about GitHub Actions is there's this thing called a super linter, and it's just a drop-in thing into your pipeline, which will actually do the linting for you of pretty much any programming language we happen to be using. So we turn that on, and straight away it's running PyLint, Flake 8, Black. There's a Java linter in there because our data flow pipelines are written in Java. So we immediately got linting for all those things through virtually no effort. And when I saw that, I thought, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. So that's been a big plus for us. It's annoying to a lot of our developers who commit a lot of code, and straight away it blows up because they haven't adhered to these standards that these tools sort of preach. But they've kind of got used to it, and you can mitigate those sorts of things with tools like pre-commit, which is something that you're using as well. But yeah, that's a long way of saying I really like GitHub Actions.
I'm sure obviously that really does help with the quality control, and something our viewers I'm sure will be really interested in hearing.
Yeah.
Just a final reminder before I come on to our last kind of line of question. We're currently live here. Harnham's been joined by Moneysupermarket's Jamie Thomson today, who is a lead engineer, been discussing the implementation of streaming architecture on the cloud, in this case being GCP. We're just touching on engineering best practices and how to get the most out of your engineers. So if you do have any questions, it's kind of your last chance. Please do get them in the comment section before we wrap up. But before we do wrap up, Jamie, I'm sure the question on a lot of viewers' lips will be to do with the coding language of choice. I know that a lot of the code is written in Java, so if you can expand on that, that'll be much appreciated.
Yeah. So when you're I'll focus on the data flow pipelines that we're writing. So when you do that, you have to use an open source SDK called Apache Beam. Mm-hmm. It's an SDK that allows you to write these data flow pipelines essentially. And I think there are two supported languages for that, Java and Python. I think Scala will soon be supported, but I don't think it's quite there yet. So really you've got a choice between Java and Python. And we discovered that the Java SDK is slightly further on than the Python SDK. There are certain things that you could do in the Java SDK that you can't do in the Python one just yet. So for us, it was a bit of a no-brainer to use Java for those data flow pipelines, really. For other stuff downstream, I mentioned that we're using Python to automate a lot of our testing by using this BDD framework that I talked about. Aside from that, within that CI/CD pipeline that I talked about, we've got what I think of as a deployment framework. We've got a way of deploying our code. So we wrap a lot of our Terraform code with, essentially, you can think of them as scripts, and those scripts are written in Python. So a lot of our deployment is driven by Python code calling Terraform. So a lot of Python going on there. And the other big language that we're going to be using, because we're in BigQuery, is SQL. You know, which is great for me because I've been a SQL engineer for about 20 odd years. It's pretty much all I know. So yeah, big thing for us is being able to write efficient SQL queries in BigQuery. So going back to your earlier question about what sort of experience that people need, I said specifically that we want people who have experience of building data pipelines, ETL workflows, things like that. And that's a classic example, right? We want someone who can write good SQL code. I'm a bit opinionated on this, but I think that's not an easy thing to do. Some people think it's a very easy thing to do because it's tools that can do it for you. But there's certain nuances of writing SQL code, which is quite difficult. And you only really know that stuff if you've been doing it for a lot of years. So if we are taking on people who are experienced, those are the sorts of skills I'll be looking for. Not specifically experience of using BigQuery, but experience of writing SQL queries and designing ETL workflows using SQL when you're working with massive amounts of data. That's crucial for us.
Yeah, I think the fundamentals of the programming languages, including SQL, is what we tend to find that clients want.
And you know what? It's interesting that I said this before, but I've been around quite a while now, and every so often you sort of see this movement away from SQL, but it always sort of seems to come back. About 4 or 5 years ago, it was like Apache Spark was the big thing, and I did a lot of Spark stuff back then. I've got to say I'm a massive fan of Apache Spark. I like that programming style, but you know what? A lot of things just come back to SQL in the end, and that's what I find we're doing here, and perfectly happy about it.
Great to hear. Keep making out you're old, Jamie. You're really not. So you don't look it.
Sometimes feel I am, Henry. I want to look at you. You still got your hand.
Final technical question. So I'd obviously love viewers to get involved, but from me, again, we've been through a lot, but I'm really keen to hear, other than SQL, which language you'd advise candidates to look into and learn.
Okay, I think easy answer for that is Python. It's very popular these days. I think it's still one of the top 2 or 3 languages, most popular languages on that get questions about on Stack Overflow. And if you look at all the open source projects on GitHub, it seems to be one of the most popular languages there. I think if you've got Python, a Python string to your bow, you're not going to go far wrong. There's going to be a lot of work out there for you. Yeah.
Most of our clients are requiring Python at the moment. It's refreshing when we get a Scala or Java position in. Again, I think it comes down to that potential versatility. Working with data scientists who tend to use Python more regularly. Yeah. So, but again, any opinions or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, my last role actually, we for a particular thing that we were building, we moved away from Python and built something in Scala. Which the on-ramp to Scala is pretty steep, I found. Understanding how to get started is pretty difficult. Getting started with Python is dead easy. You open up a command line, type Python, and you're away. It's not quite that easy with Scala. However, once you get into it, it's a really powerful language, and I really got into sort of the functional programming paradigm that Scala brings. And when you get your head into that sort of frame of mind of writing functional code, which we were doing in Scala, and that's when I was doing a lot of Spark work in my last job. It's quite therapeutic in a way, because you're learning new ways of doing things, and I found it quite appealing doing that type of work. But then again, you take those experiences that you learn in one language and you can apply them to languages that you know already. If using a language which really pushes you towards doing functional programming, you find that those sort of techniques are something you can leverage in something else you may be doing. So Python, for example, can be written in a very functional manner, and I found that taking my experience of doing Scala development back into Python was beneficial, because I found I was able to question a lot of the things I was doing. I was looking at code I'd written before and saying, actually, I could have probably done that better in a bit of a different way. And it's just purely based on my experiences of doing something slightly different.
Yeah, it's really interesting and fruit for thought for our viewers, who hopefully will have taken a lot from this LinkedIn Live. So we'll wrap up with the final question, and it's a bit more open. But Jamie, where do you see data and analytics going in the next year, and how do you think COVID might impact this?
Well, 2 questions there, isn't there, really? I certainly think that there's going to be a big push towards doing the type of stuff that we're doing, which is building streaming architectures rather than batch processing routines. I think we're moving away from batch now, and encourage people to kind of get on that train. It's a lot more fun. I'm being perfectly biased, and it's easy for me to say that because that's what we're doing here, but that's why I took the role here, right? I knew there was an opportunity to do that type of work. And that was, it was really interesting to me. And I certainly think there's going to be a lot more companies trying to do some of the things. We were very lucky because MSM had already invested in a Kafka architecture for running the actual main customer-facing website, so we're able to hook on the back of that. Might not be so easy for other people that don't have that investment already, but certainly something that should be looked at. As far as COVID goes, who knows? We're looking to get back into our offices pretty soon. I've never been to our office. I've been in this room ever since I started. No, I'll leave at night. My boss was joking with me earlier today when he was speaking to me. He said, "I've only ever seen you in that room, Jamie. It's, there must be another part of your life." And there is, but at work, this is it. But yeah, I want to get back into the office, meeting people. I want to meet my colleagues. I've never met them face to face.
Yeah.
How it affects things in the future, I don't know. I strongly suspect that the traditional 5-day working week in the office is gone, and I'd be quite happy with that. And more time spent at home, less time commuting is absolutely fine by me. Especially as a family man, I've got 3 kids and want to spend as much time with them as possible. And being here, working from home means I get to take them to school some days and pick them up, which for me is great. So yeah, I think that is going to be the big effect of the pandemic of COVID. That 5-day working week in the office probably is going to be different in the future.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's benefits to both, of course, but having that flexibility is probably where a lot of clients are going, and I think that will be music to a lot of candidates' ears. You mentioned about meeting people. Yeah, we've had loads of new starters join, and haven't had the pleasure of meeting them, but I managed to one of the lads in my team through football and getting back out playing football, which was amazing. And look forward to meeting the others, as I'm sure you do. But no, it's been a pleasure, Jamie. I'd just like to say finally, for viewers once again who are looking for new opportunities across data and analytics, please do get in touch. You can see full visibility of Harnham's jobs on our website, and do not hesitate to get in touch. Basically, thank you to the viewers for tuning in today. Hopefully, you found it helpful. Yeah, and Jamie, massive thank you to you and Moneysupermarket for giving us your time. Hope you've enjoyed it. Any final thoughts or comments?
No, just thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about it. You can probably tell I'm quite passionate about this stuff, and I do enjoy talking about it. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to do it. No
problem. It's been a pleasure. Thank you ever so much, mate.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.